What's going on, guys? So you've been watching cool movies, you've been seeing some stuff online, and now you're interested in becoming a firearm owner. Well, before you do that, before you can do badass stuff like this, there's some really important things that you must know, and that's the 4 rules of gun safety. Rule number 1, and probably one of the most important rules, is treat every firearm as if it is loaded. Whether it's loaded or unloaded.
Mom, That's okay.
That's rule number 1. We treat every firearm as if it's a loaded firearm. And the main reason for doing that is because if you treat every firearm as if it's loaded, then you know not to do something that you would do with a loaded gun, right? Pretty obvious, right? So with a loaded firearm, we're not going to put the finger on the trigger, because if the firearm is loaded and we press that trigger, what's going to happen, right? Bullet's going to go flying forward. Bullet is going to go boom, right? So that's one reason. Another reason is, or another way of saying treat every firearm as if it's loaded, is know the status of your firearm. Know the condition of your firearm, right? Know if there's a bullet inside the chamber before picking this firearm up, right? You're not just going to trust someone who hands you their firearm and trust that they given you a safe firearm, that the firearm is clear. So we want to know the condition of the gun, and we want to treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Also, if you have a loaded firearm, you're not going to be pointing it right at people. You're going to be pointing it, keeping it in a safe direction, whether that's downrange or away from people. So that's why we want to treat every firearm as if it's loaded, because even if it's not loaded, we want to make sure that we're following the safety principles and having the discipline that it takes to own and be a responsible firearms owner. With that being said, we're going to go to rule number 2. And rule number 2 is finger off the trigger. And just as simple as that sounds, is keeping this finger high on the frame at all times, except when you are down target, you got your sights on the target, and you are ready to shoot. That's the only time your finger comes off, high off the trigger, and goes onto the trigger itself. You take your shot once you're done shooting, and that is pretty much obvious, guys. It's just to minimize, or it's just to keep safe, right? It's just to keep safe, because again, if there's a bullet loaded in this firearm and you press a trigger, what happens? Bullet goes boom, boom, right? So you always want to keep that finger off the trigger until you're aiming down target and you have your sights on target. With that being said, we're going to go to rule number 3. Rule number 3 is pretty straightforward as well. And rule number 3 is just know what is beyond your target, right? So whether that's at the range, whether that's in a self-defense situation, you always want to know what's going to be beyond your target, right? Say I'm walking down Boulevard of Broken Dreams, right? And there's a school in front of me. Some guy comes to rob me with a gun, and I act in self-defense. I pull out my weapon and I shoot him first. Well, now that bullet that I use could possibly go through him, hit a kid while they're at recess at that school playground, and now instead of becoming a self-defense hero, you are a criminal going to jail for murder, right? So we want to always know what's beyond that target before we press that trigger. And just like shooting at water or shooting at the ground can ricochet bullets, right? So you just want to be aware of those things. So that's rule number 3. Rule number 4, and last rule, is going to be do not point at anything you are not willing to destroy. So it's pretty much straightforward, right? We're not going to point this gun at nothing except a target, which is going to be at the range, or God forbid you need to use it in a self-defense situation. This muzzle, front of the gun, right, where the bullet, or front of the barrel where the bullet ejects, you're never going to muzzle someone. You're never going to point it at someone, never point it at a dog, an animal, whatever the case may be. Don't point it at a house. Don't point it at a mailbox. Don't point it at anything but your target. And that is pretty much straightforward. I don't think I need to go too depth into that, right? Because if I'm pointing this at something I'm not supposed to, and the gun accidentally goes off, right? Well, guess what? you're gonna have a bad day. So never point the gun at nothing you are not willing to destroy. With that being said, guys, all these 4 rules are cohesive together, right? They would just work together, right? So we always want to know, or we always want to make sure that we're treating each gun as if it's loaded, because then we're going to practice those safety rules like keeping your finger off the trigger, or not pointing the gun at nothing you're not willing to destroy, or knowing what's beyond that target. Guys, so these 4 rules, you need to know these before you guys can become successful and responsible gun owners. So know these 4 rules. Tattoo them onto your skin. I don't care what you do, but just know these 4 rules, because they are the most important. And if you guys understand these 4 rules, there's not going to be any firearm accidents, right? Because your finger's never going to be on the trigger unless you're aiming at target. You're not going to be pointing the gun at anything but a target, right? You're always going to be making sure that your gun is clear, that your gun is safe, always treating it like if it's loaded. So guys, please, please, please follow these 4 rules, memorize them, and become very responsible gun owners, guys. That's what we're here for, right? I admit the movies and stuff make it look badass, right? But we also want to be responsible. Just be responsible. Practice those 4 rules. Memorize them. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys are going to come at me because I didn't say the rules technically in order how most people know them, but it doesn't matter. Just remember, those are the 4 most important rules that you guys need to know. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you later. Remember, stay blessed, stay righteous, and have fun shooting.